Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. There is another pseudo is he staying, is he going situation in the SEC, and that is Mark Stoops, and that is the University of Kentucky. Okay, so University of Kentucky, it has certainly been a whirlwind couple weeks for the Kentucky football job, okay? So Mark Stoops, listen, I don't know if he necessarily, quote unquote, came into the season on the hot seat. Now, I thought it was a little more perilous than most, but he coached himself on the hot seat because 1 year after going 1-7 in the SEC, started out what? 0-5 in the SEC? Started out what? 2-5 overall? And it felt like, man, oh man, this dude, he's going to be gone. You know, we talked about it a few weeks ago. There were reports that he was considering being willing to renegotiate his buyout. There was consideration of whatever. And so I bring it up because we thought Mark Stoops was done. It was just a question of how. Then the little sucker went on a little winning streak, didn't he? So Mark Stoops, 3-game winning streak going into last weekend. The stunner at Kentucky, or the stunner at Auburn, that cost Hugh Freeze his job. Then you just beat down Florida at home. It was the first win at Kroger Field for Kentucky in the SEC in over 2 calendar years. And then you laid the whooping to Tennessee Tech. And so all felt good with Mark Stoops. Felt like he was going to get back for another year. But there was this little thing of, yeah, you probably should win one of your final 2 games just to be safe. And at Vandy, at Louisville, you can do it, Mark Stoops. You just beat Florida. You just beat Auburn. Well, the bad news for Mark Stoops, it was not pretty when they went to Vandy last week. You know, I thought Diego Pavia, you know, a heck of a statement in the Heisman Trophy race. 45-17 was the final score in that game. And I only bring it up because, like I said, Diego Pavia, 5 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing touchdown, and the Vanderbilt Commodores take care of Kentucky. And so now you're 5-6. You are looking at potentially missing a bowl game for the 2nd straight year after making 8 straight. And it feels like Mark Stoops' job is back in peril. Well, I bring it up because there was one man that was asked about Mark Stoops' future on Monday, and that was Mark Stoops. He was asked about why he believes, I don't know the exact question that he was asked, but basically here was his response to the situation. Quote, "Whether you like it or not, I'm a Kentuckian. I've been here as long as I've been anywhere. I left home at 17 and haven't been back. This is home." So Mark Stoops being asked about, you know, does he want to stay? Should he stay? Whatever. Says, quote, "I'm a Kentuckian. I've been here as long as I've been anywhere. I left home at 17. I've been here now 14 years. This is home to me." And so I thought that was an interesting quote. But I thought what was maybe even more interesting was later in the evening when he did his coach's call-in show. He dropped a little, you know, Mark Stoops is a little woj. He was dropping nuggets left and right in the phone call, in the call-in show, was talking about his future. And he referenced that Cutter BOLDLY, his quarterback, has announced, not has announced publicly, but has told him privately that he is going to be back for another year. And so I bring this up because, to me, I don't think these 2 news items are unrelated. All right, we're going to get back to the video that you're watching in just a second. But before we do, let's be honest. Being a college football fan in 2025, yeah, it'll age you fast. Your team stinks. You need a new head coach. Where's all the buyout money coming from? College football these days will leave you with a lot of wrinkles. But just because your team lets you down doesn't mean you can't keep that skin glowing. And I want to welcome a new partner to the Aaron Torres pod, Tiege Hanley, which makes uncomplicated skincare routines for men that actually work. So listen, even if your football team has you stressed, doesn't mean you can't still look good. I got the face wash right here. Tiege Hanley sent it to me. It works like a charm. I'm using it every day. Oh, by the way, we got the eye cream right here. Yeah, when you're looking at message boards all night long into the early morning hours, you're going to get some crow's feet. You need the eye cream. Tiege Hanley Love this about them. They use quality science-backed ingredients and they ship everything you need right to your door each month. It's skincare made simple, no guesswork, no fancy nonsense. Even better, listen, we're approaching the holidays, and the bottom line is you're trying to find some gift ideas for you, for friends, for family. Well, guess what, fellas? This is the perfect gift to get you looking good into 2026. Maybe you got a new head coach. Maybe you'll be showing up for the press conference. You want to look good. Ladies, isn't this sort of the gift that's for him, but also for you as well? That's Tiege Hanley. Best part is, though, Tiege Hanley is taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres pod with a very special offer. You can get 40% off your first box plus a free $20 gift. All you got to do is click the link in the description or pin comment to grab the deal. Again, 40% off your first box plus a free $20 gift. All you got to do is click the link in the description or the pin comment to take advantage of that deal. Trust me, your skin or whoever you get Tiege Hanley for, great gift again for the fellas in your life. Everybody's going to thank you. Your team might have you stressed, but there's no reason that you have to look it. Thank you to Tiege Hanley. Take advantage of the offer. We appreciate their support of the Aaron Torres pod. In other words, I think Mark Stoops very strategically went to the podium on Monday, made his case for why he believes he should remain the Kentucky head coach, and then little carrot at the end of the string says, oh, by the way, my quarterback is coming back too. You guys should bring me back. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about if it's even realistic that Mark Stoops is gone. And listen, it does start with what I said a minute ago, is that I think when Kentucky went on that 3-game winning streak, I think there was a thought, okay, when one of the next two, you're 6-6, you started 2-5, not great at math. That means you finished 4-1 down the stretch, though. And you absolutely, you're 14, you deserve another year. You just do at that point, okay? You salvaged the season, you got the quarterback, all that good stuff. The Vandy loss and the manner in which it happened certainly did raise some eyebrows, though, because it was all the things that you hate about Kentucky football if you're a Kentucky fan. Beat up by a program that you used to own. I think that's the frustrating part. That, forget all the Diego Pavia this, whatever. It's that, Kentucky's sitting there saying, why is Vandy on the verge of a 10-win season, but we're not? If Vandy can be a 10-win program, there's no reason we can't be. Now, I think everyone understands it's probably not an annual realistic goal at Kentucky. I don't think it is at Vandy either. I don't think it is at a lot of places. Just was talking to a South Carolina fan 10 minutes ago. He's like, yeah, I thought we were going to be awesome this year. Look what happened to us. So I understand it's not realistic, but to lose to Vandy in the manner you did, it shows the gap, how big that gap has widened. And so now there's a lot of questions as to whether or not, if Kentucky were to lose to Louisville, Mark Stoops, not Mark Pope, Mark Stoops should be back. Okay. So let me give my thoughts, and I will preface it by saying what I always say on this show. I never tell a fan how to feel. I know Mark Stoops is a very polarizing topic in the state of Kentucky right now. And if you're just over him, if you don't want him, if you don't think he should be back, I'm not here to try to convince you otherwise. What I will tell you, though, I think he's coming back, and I think probably it's the right thing. A couple reasons. It's the obvious ones. First of all, he does have that massive buyout. Kentucky fans, you know the number. I think, what is it, $39 million, all owed within 60 days. And I will say, it was funny. We went off air on Sunday right after the Florida State news dropped that Mike Norvell was coming back. And I bring it up because I think a lot of people were surprised. But the counter is, I do think we live in this world where we all just believe that all these schools operate with monopoly money and it's not real. And, James Franklin gets this and Brian Kelly. No. The difference between those buyouts and Mark Stoops is much different. First of all, Brian Kelly's buyout is clearly still pretty bad because LSU is trying to mitigate it in court. They're trying to fight it so they don't have to pay. James Franklin, yes, it was $50 million on paper, but as we found out, Penn State's going to pay him about $9 million to go away and start over. Mark Stoops is owed his entirety of his salary within 60 days. That is insane, and that's a huge check to write. And is that a check that you want to write when there's a little bit of momentum in the program? So there's that part of it. There's the part about all of these other jobs are open right now. Arkansas, we're going to talk about in a minute. 3 months head start on this coaching search. Auburn, a month head start. Ole Miss potentially could be open in a day or two. Florida or LSU, even if the other one gets Ole Miss, is going to be hiring a coach. Do you want to be that far down the pecking order and waiting until the last weekend in November to make a final decision? I don't think you do. Most importantly, though, you know what the X factor is to me? It's that Cutter BOLDLY, I think, is really good. Now, listen, I would assume mostly Kentucky fans will be watching this segment, so shout out to you guys for tuning in, and we appreciate your support. If you're not a Kentucky fan, you're probably sitting there saying, who's Cutter BOLDLY? Why is, like, 15 touchdowns, 10 interceptions? Is he really that good? Like, he's that good. And that's the thing. Now, I will say this. If I was Mitch Barnhart, we'll get to Mitch Barnhart in a second. If I was Mitch Barnhart, I'd be damn sure that what Mark Stoops said about Cutter BOLDLY is true. In other words, is Mark Stoops saying this publicly to protect himself? But if Cutter BOLDLY's coming back, listen, the toughest part of being a football coach at any level is finding the right quarterback. I mean, listen, the reason Bobby Petrino is not going to be the head coach at Arkansas is because he bet on the wrong quarterback. Trying to think. Hugh Freeze. I don't want to say, I think the reason Hugh Freeze isn't coaching is because he's a terrible play caller, or at least he was in the final iteration at Auburn. But he clearly was not playing the best quarterback, and it cost him his job. And so with Mark Stoops, he found the quarterback. That's the hard part. And that was another interesting thing that Mark Stoops said on Monday night, was that our job now is to go out and build a team around him through the portal and JUCOs and high school and this and that. And so you have the quarterback. The buyout is insane. The situation with other head coaches will never be crazier. I think you hold on to him, and the final variable is, I just don't know if Mitch Barnhart's going to do it. And by the way, we'll get to some of your questions, your comments in a second. But Mitch Barnhart, the AD, the assumption is he's going to retire at the end of the year. 66 years old. I didn't realize quite how long he had been there for. I knew he had been there a while. I forgot that not only has he been there so long, he hired John Calipari. He also hired Billy Gillispie before him. Mitch Barnhart was there when Tubby Smith was the head coach of Kentucky basketball. So I just bring it up because that guy's on the way out. You think he's really going to fire a head coach? Even if he goes 5-7, pay him $39 million on his way out the door? I just don't see it. And so we'll see what happens. I actually, Matt, if we have any questions from Kentucky fans, I'd love to get to them, or comments, because I don't know where Kentucky fans stand on this. But I think this is Mark Stoops kind of going to the podium and saying, I think I'm going to be the head coach. Let's start focusing on 2026 with Cutter BOLDLY. So Luke says, word from Matt Jones is Mitch Barnhart is retiring this summer. In that case, it's even more unlikely that he'll fire Stoops. He'll let the next AD choose their guy. And to me, that's the X factor. Is I don't think an outgoing AD is going to fire one of his best friends, fire the guy he brought in. I mean, for Kentucky fans watching, they hugged on the field at Auburn when they won. You could see them embrace. You could see how much it meant to both of them to get that win, which was obviously their first SEC win as a program in over a calendar year. So Luke brings up the most important point. I think that probably realistically the AD will not be there a year from now. And that's a future AD problem, right? Mitch Barnhart can retire and say, hey, somebody else wants to pay that $39 million. They can figure it out. Obviously, it won't be a $39 million buyout at that point. But somebody else can figure it out. Not my problem. Not going to worry about it, whatever. So we'll see what happens there. I'll say this. If Mitch Barnhart is going to retire, I think he's probably got to announce it pretty soon. I know, obviously, there are a couple internal candidates. Dwayne Peavy at DePaul would be a logical replacement as well. But you still need time to transition, and I don't know that you can just make the announcement on July 1st at the beginning of the fiscal year. So we'll see what happens. I kind of believe Mark Stoops will be the head coach, and I think it's pretty official, and I think he's talking like he's going to be the next head coach, or the head coach at Kentucky next year. Matt, anything else on Mark Stoops before we get to Arkansas? Darren says, Kentucky will never be anything but a doormat for the SEC under Stoops, but of course keep him for more years of heartbreak for our fan base. I think it's totally fair. And I think that's why the loss to Vandy was so devastating, was because there's no reason Vandy should be that much better than you. Now, by the way, to be fair to Mark Stoops, maybe it's just a Diego Pavia thing, because until Diego Pavia got there last year, Vandy wasn't exactly running all over Kentucky the way that they did last weekend. But I do think that's part of it, is you can't be losing to Vandy in the manner that you did. By the way, the loss to South Carolina has aged insanely poorly. Now, to be fair, you also should be in Texas. You did beat Florida for what, a third time in a row at home. So there are some positives, but you will, I mean, I do think, and that's why I'll say this real quick, and then we'll move on to Arkansas because there's some news there. This is why it's hard for me to be mad at Kentucky fans, because I think even if you bring him back, the ceiling is probably 6-6, 7-5, especially, by the way, with the extra SEC game coming in. True. UK is the doormat and we get chastised for complaining. Take your loser spot and enjoy. I don't know if that's sarcasm to me, but that's my exact point. That's the argument about not bringing back Mark Stoops, is that the ceiling is 6-6, 7-5. And I don't think any program should have to settle for that if you have the right coach. And I think the other thing is, the candidates that you want, specifically Will Stein, who is from the state of Kentucky, will he be available a year from now?